The Fallschirmjäger, the paratroopers of the German Luftwaffe, were the first to be committed in large-scale airborne operations. They captured airfields, bridges, and enemy fortresses in the early years of the war. During the Greece campaign, the German airborne forces would perform their last strategic parachute and glider performances of the war. The Battle of Crete in May of 1941 was the first mainly airborne invasion in military history. But due to the number of casualties and the belief that airborne forces no longer had the advantage of surprise, Adolf Hitler became reluctant to authorize further large-scale airborne operations, preferring instead to employ the German paratroopers as elite ground troops. In contrast, the military high command of Germany's Axis ally, the Imperial Japan, was impressed by the potential of paratroopers and started to form airborne assault units. In mid-August of 1941, the Naval General Staff issued an order to train 1,500 paratroopers within 2 months in preparation for the outbreak of the Pacific War. The troops were officially part of the Kaigun Tokubetsu Rikusentai, the Special Naval Landing Forces, or the Marines of the Imperial Japanese Navy. The 1st Battalion was formed on the 20th of September 1941 with 520 paratroopers. Captain Toyoaki Horiuchi, an outstanding naval officer, was assumed command of the new elite unit. The paratroopers were led by Navy officers who had trained at the Imperial Japanese Army Infantry School. The first training drop occurred in November of 1941. The uniform of the paratroopers was the standard Special Naval Landing Forces dark green with dark black and dark brown belts and harness. Headgear was similar to the Imperial Japanese Army field cap, but with a chin strap and integral side and neckpiece. They wore standard infantry equipment with additional ammunition bandoliers, along with dark brown boots and gloves. The Japanese Navy planned to use the paratroop force as a diversion by coordinating the timing of a seaborne assault and a parachute drop to create maximum surprise at the point of contact. In particular, it was intended that the Japanese paratroopers would attack and disable airfields, preventing enemy warplanes from interfering with the amphibious landings. If they were successful, it would also allow the Japanese to use the airfields for their own warplanes. This tactic was based on the recent experiences of the German Fallschirmjäger in the Battle of Crete in May of 1941. Theoretically, the lightly armed parachute units were not meant to become entangled in heavy, pitched land battles. However, their operational use would prove to be contrary to this doctrine. The Battle of Manado took place as part of the Japanese offensive to capture the Dutch East Indies. It occurred on the Minahasa Peninsula on the northern part of Celebes Island in January of 1942. The battle was noted as the first time in Japanese history that the country had deployed paratroopers in a military operation. Even though the peninsula did not contain any raw materials or strategic technical installations, its military value remained essential. It sheltered base of Manado and provided optimal bases for seaplanes. According to the Japanese plan, the paratroopers under Commander Horiuchi, in conjunction with the landing force, would carry out a paradrop operation on the enemy airfield on the 11th of January. Their objectives were to seize Langun Airfield and the Kakas seaplane base, two facilities that would support subsequent Japanese operations for the Dutch East Indies campaign. On the 11th of January 1942, the first group began dropping over Langun at 9:50 and completed the drop by 10:30 a.m. The Dutch troops, though lacking in anti-aircraft guns, used their Vickers and Madsen machine guns to open fire into the Paras and repel the oncoming assault. Several Paras were dropped close to Dutch pillboxes, and they had to destroy them with their pistols and hand grenades, while giving time for the rest of the group to gather weapons from the cargo containers. In spite of the Dutch resistance, the first group overran the airfield by 11:30 a.m. Upon capturing the airfield, Horiuchi sent a reconnaissance team to the Kakas area at 1 p.m. to reconnoiter Dutch positions. After the extensive fight, the Paras drove the Dutch troops off and seized the seaplane base by 6 p.m. The following day, the second drop group parachuted into Langun Airfield and linked up with the first drop group. Horiuchi's force, in full capacity, launched an assault on Langun City. By 2 p.m., he managed to link up with both the first and second landing force. From the 13th of January, the Sasebo Combined Special Landing Force conducted a mopping up operation of Manado and its vicinity. They completed this operation by the 16th of January 1942. The Japanese force reassembled in November of 1942 to be transported back to Japan. The Japanese airborne casualties from the battle were relatively light. 32 paratroopers were killed and approximately 90 were wounded. Manado remained under Japanese occupation until late October of 1945. After the war, Captain Horiuchi was put on a trial by the Dutch authorities as a war criminal. The charges were that Horiuchi ordered or allowed Dutch army officers to be subjected to systematic terrorism. He was in a position of knowing the terrorism and did not punish his Japanese officers and soldiers. In 1942, at least 30 Dutch officers were killed with swords. He was in position of knowing this, but did not take the necessary preventive measures. Horiuchi sent a letter of testimony that he did not know these facts. However, he felt responsible as an officer of superior rank. In May of 1948, Horiuchi was sentenced to death and he was executed by a firing squad in Manado in September of the same year. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and to make sure you don't miss my future work, please make sure you are subscribed to my channel and press the bell notification button. Thank you and see you in the next video.